Hello, it's Classy here back with another Tribes video, and today we're continuing with our series where I go through all the tier lists for every single game mode, and they're all updated because it's 1.5 anniversary and it's definitely a good time to check in on all the units in the game that's been out since the beginning. So remember, we go to tier list here, make sure to check out the disclaimers, and I like to use this number system instead because it's easier to compare and sort and stuff. But some people might want to see more compact information and it might be more useful for videos. So you just go to the link and you just type it in. We're working on the buttons and stuff at the time I'm recording this video, so maybe it'll be easier to access these later. But here we go, this is an Ninja World Tournament. You might notice that SS tier is missing units and we don't have anyone in there. I maybe put KCM in there potentially because he's just good for any Ninja World Tournament cell for all those insta-jutsu buffs. He just provides so many different offensive and defensive buffs that you'll need to open up his unit information in another tab to read them all. But in the meantime, we'll just leave him here for now. The reason we don't have units in SS like Arena is because Ninja World Tournament has so many different cells that you can use, and the cells might not be your average, Arena cells. So you might see some units in here that are kind of strange, and also some people like to use tribes to get more points in Ninja World Tournament. We won't be considering those because this is a general unit tier list. But those are just examples of cells that you might not think about when you think of like PvP cells. So let's just jump right into it. A lot of these units were covered already in the Arena tier list, so we'll be taking less time on them. And first up is You Are Heavy. He has the 2 stuns. He boosts himself really well. And remember that Ninja World Tournament is 3-on-3 only. There's no rotations, so he can just keep staying in rotation, and that definitely impacts whether a unit is good or not. Vitality also matters, of course, so you can get early jutsus off, but there are some units in here that don't have the best vitalities, and this is the difference between Ninja World Tournament and Ninja Arena, because Ninja Arena has a much bigger emphasis on the vitality itself. All the units with like 5k initial or above are placed pretty high, unless your effects are really bad, which I don't think I found. So that's just something to keep in mind when looking at this tier list. So yeah, he can boost attack, he can boost critical rate and paralyze. So just a very strong nuker with status effects, and this is just a great pick for pretty much any mode. He's a timeless unit, just like Kakashi is a timeless unit. He has insta jutsu, he can stun, then he'll boost his own critical rate permanently at the start of any turn after user activates special jutsu tribe special. So just really great stacking on himself. And especially in Ninja World Tournament, he'll be able to stay in rotation, just keep jutsuing at people. Now for Seihimo Jiraiya, he's really great for this mode because he's tanky, he can heal himself, he does AoE stun and burn. And notice that he'll boost allies damage reduction rate when there are 6 or fewer undefeated allies. Same for guard rate, and the cool thing about Ninja World Tournaments, there will always be 6 or fewer because you only have 3 allies. So that's a cool synergy that he has with the game mode itself. And remember what I said earlier, you're always going to be in active rotation as long as you're alive. So all of these tanks with their strong tank defense buffs that appear whenever they're in active rotation will just keep triggering this, and that's why got quite a few tanks up here. So he's there. Sasori Also got the great vitality. He also falls into the tank category, so he has all those tank buffs, like the status effect suppression rate, which is important because there's a lot of status effect going on. And of course, we have Santa Naruto. If you put them together, they can combo well, but you don't necessarily need to. Santa Naruto also just does a ton of damage, 5k initial, self-stacking. The confuse doesn't matter for this mode, unless you want Sasori to apply his debuffs. Sasori also works well with units that just do status effects in general, but not necessarily like the 100% status effect units, because he can boost their status effect rate by a little bit. It's kind of like SR Heavy does. So overall, these two are pretty good for Arena as well as Ninja World Tournament. Here we go. Kid Naruto was already extremely strong in Arena because he can protect your Sai. But now he also has that super cell protection that I like to call it, because it applies right at the beginning of the battle. It's permanent. But now every time he rotates in, which is every single turn in Ninja World Tournament, he'll be providing even more damage reduction rate. Then whenever he jutsus, he'll provide even more defensive buffs. So you can really keep your characters alive here. KCM we've already covered. Here, White Mask is kind of like the power creep version of Sage Mode Jiraiya. I mentioned this above. He also has the stun. He has the AoE damage, but he can also do the debuffs on enemy damage increase rate. And then he also provides some buffs just like the other tanks. So when he's active, he'll provide 22% damage reduction rate just like Kid Naruto does. He also has a permanent buff for all of your allies' guard rate. So it's a little different from Kid Naruto because Kid Naruto applies it to one cell and he applies it to everyone. Overall, still a really great tank to use. And we like those AoE stunner tanks. It's pretty useful. You'll notice that Sai is not an SS tier, and he's not even an S tier. His name also begins with an S. So in Arena and all the other modes, Sai is pretty cracked, but not in Ninja World Tournament. And the reason is because it's 3-on-3, there's nowhere for Sai to hide after one rotation. He'll just always be exposed, and he'll likely get destroyed by some unit fairly early on. And the issue with that is you really can't benefit from all that chakra generation anymore. Like, if he boosts your ally chakra only once and then he just gets picked off, then you're in a 2v3, and sure, the chakra is nice and all, but probably won't save you, and you'll just be in a disadvantage the whole time. So that's why Sai is not that good anymore. You can still use him in Ninja World Tournament cells if you build correctly. Ninja World Tournament involves a lot of different team ideas and building them correctly. So again, you can head to the Discord server that I have, and people are happy to teach you how to do this stuff. But yeah, that's it about Sai for this mode. Gaara, again, super guard rate buffer for your team. He falls under the tank category. Whenever he's in rotation, which is all the time, he'll just apply these really strong buffs. 22% again, looks like they have a common theme going, but the guard rate by 20%. So just consider this permanent because it applies every single turn. Some more buffs and stuff on his jutsu. So Gaara is great for Ninja World Tournament. Oh yeah, the speed kind of matters too, but you know, everyone has Rio Festival and you can upgrade speed. If you have a tanky cell, the speed isn't as important. And Ninja World Tournament matchmaking is kind of scuffed, so there will be times where you will have less speed than your opponent's cell. So that's why you want to build the cells correctly so that you can win in both cases. Tsunade is really great with AoE nukers. There's a trend going on in Ninja World Tournament where you have her AoE nuker and then like Kid Naruto or another strong tank, so that you'll be able to defend yourselves until it's time for the AoE nuker to use their jutsu, and then that will be a lot of damage on the opponents. You'll probably take out a few. If you don't, you can probably finish them off with your other units, and then she can heal back up. So that's great. Jiraiya, Jiraiya's kind of a sleeper unit now. He's been doing pretty well in the arena tier list also, but he has synergies with T units. He can buff those guys. He also increases tribe gauge, might allow you to co-op or try more often to give you more points in individual tournament. Let's see, Darui, again, falls under the tank category. He synergizes well with other tanks, as you can see here. And his jutsu is not bad either. He can actually debuff an enemy, so you can make yourself very tanky. And you want to put him in cells with other tanks. So Igetsu falls into the tank category, similar to Gaara. SR unit though. Kirin, let's see. Well, he does AoE, stun. He has big debuffs. He has attack buffs every single turn now because of the NWT rotation stuff. So, not bad. Sakura Blossom, again, Sai isn't always the best pick anymore for chakra generation. So having people like her and Tsunade for A units specifically, but she provides chakra to everybody, and the tribe gauge increase is nice. The healing is nice as well. So that's why Sakura Blossom is a really great unit for a lot of modes. Chio. Well, as I said before, Chio is very slept on. People just don't like to use her for some reason, probably because they don't like her character or whatever. Yeah, I'm pretty mad about that Sasori incident in the anime, but a good unit's a good unit, and she provides great healing, provides some good debuffs, and since she's in rotation every turn, she'll be healing a ton for every turn. And she heals one unit by a lot. I've seen the numbers. I've seen her in action in game. It's pretty crazy. Here we go, Asuma, another generic tank. There you go. I'm just going to be considering some of the other tanks as generic tanks now, just because the explanation for why they're good is always going to be the same. Hidan, similar to other tanks, he has the status effect suppression rate too, which is nice, and then he has a nuke on his jutsu. SR Heavy is not just another generic tank. He has the great vitality, boost status effect rate by 5% every turn now in Ninja World Tournament. Man, all the tanks are always doing 22% damage reduction rate when active, and then he can also provide guard rate on jutsu and stun, so just a really strong tank, and synergizes well with status effects. CM2 Revenge unit has a lot of great chakra generation for himself. He can stack status effect rate on his jutsu, so he can stun more often as time goes on. Does great damage. If you're faster, he'll give you buffs. Tobi, initial 5k jutsu, shreds tanks, which is important because there are a lot of tanks in Ninja World Tournament cells. He debuffs tanks if he doesn't kill any, and he can also stun and burn them. Sublime falls into the AoE nuker category. He's pretty strong, honestly. You just need to build around him correctly, and he can do a lot of damage. His vitality is a lot better in this mode, actually, because he gets chakra during 3-chain attack, and you're always going to be doing 3-chain attacks or 2-chain attacks because there are no rotations in this mode. So that's great. It also does extra damage during a 3-chain attack. I completely forgot about it. But a lot of self buffs on this guy, and he'll just do a lot of damage. Itachi has a similar situation as the tanks because he can apply great buffs when he's active at the start of the turn, and his jutsu is pretty strong. Overall, he has the AoE power creep. He can do a lot of great damage against D units, and he applies some great buffs for teammates. T Boruto synergizes well with T units again. And his jutsu is pretty good as well. Lasts for 3 turns, buff wise. Tigara also provides some T unit buffs. If he's going last, he boosts damage structure by 22% like the other tanks do. Now, you might not always proc this, but if you have the LB2 unlocked, which you should if you're trying to use Tigara, you can definitely do a lot of good support work for your teammates. And, you know, he can make them pretty tanky, although you might want to use a tank instead. That's why he's not in the top tier. Danzo, we talked about him before, you can do debuffs and buffs on the D unit jutsu, which is pretty strong. And the buffs are attack buffs, and he also has, you know, the tank forward skill where he can boost all of these defensive stats at the start of the turn. So apply the tank logic to him. Kakashi, he again has the versatility where he can interact differently depending on what type of unit he was attacking, and he can provide buffs every turn that you're faster. Well, in Ninja World Tournament case, you're either going to be always faster or always slower. So you might not find too much use for him all the time, but you can definitely put him into a cell. Maybe you can do some build around where you have other team units as well, because, you know, he definitely has some synergies if you use his LB2 as well. Now, I didn't mention this in the last tier list video, but we're assuming that you have LB2s unlocked for these units when we're ranking them. Obito does a ton of damage, does the great debuffs if he doesn't actually kill the enemy. He stacks on himself, just like the other A-nuking Uchiha clan members. And he has initial 5k. Minato, initial 5k, does great damage. T-nuker. Also, just like repeatedly boosting attack is nice for the cell. Oh, and also he stacks on his jutsu. I didn't mention that last time. Okay, Six Tails, another AoE nuker. I'd argue that if you have him in Sublime, you might want to use him because he can do the debuffs. So the damage reduction rate decrease for 2 turns. That's great. He also does damage increase rate boost both permanently and before his jutsu. And then he will also stack on himself with every turn that passes. That might take a while to boot up though, but maybe you'll survive for a few turns to get some decent benefit out of it. Itsuki, another T nuker, has a stun. He has debuffs. He has 5k initial. And he has an active at the start of the turn ability with his 4th skill and LB2. So he'll just repeatedly be proccing these. You can consider them permanent. And of course these don't stack, but you can consider it like a one-time permanent effect, you know. So these are pretty useful effects. And now that I think about it, Itsuki is actually pretty strong because he has the effect that tanks like to have also. Tikisame. He won't be able to give you chakra until you defeat an enemy, but in the meantime, let's see. Oh yeah, you're gonna need to defeat an enemy first if you want to get max benefit out of this guy. He can do some pretty good debuffs and buffs for your team at least, but if you want to get full benefit from this unit, you definitely need to defeat an enemy sometime. Maybe put him with some units that can jutsu early and do great damage. We'll see. Mei, she is one of those very special units that can affect the battle right at the beginning. Like she affects special ninjutsu and tribe special damage increase rate by 28%, which is a lot, and no other unit does that stuff. That's pretty important. She also has the active at the start of the turn buffs that we like to talk about in Ninja World Tournament. And her jutsu is great. AoE damage, boost status effect rate by 6%, which is a lot. And critical rate, guard team reduction rate. A lot of great buffs on this one unit from multiple aspects of her kit. So, just a great support unit. Kid Sasuke is pretty strong. Maybe you can think of some kind of combos where you use his chakra generation, but he also has the active at the start of the turn effect. He can stack on himself, like the other Chia clan members. Now, by like stacking on themselves, I mean you might need a unit to be defeated first. So you might need your ally to be defeated first before you can begin the stacking. But that's kind of how the revenge unit thing works with the Chia clan units. You know, they like their revenge. So he also has a stun and more buffs for attack for your allies. So the offensive support unit. Deep Orto, confused doesn't matter here. Guard rate by 32% is pretty good. Status effect suppression rate is pretty good. He has, again, the active at the start of the turn buffs. You know, pretty generic tank stuff right here. And if you're going last, he can give you even more buffs. So maybe that'll be useful because one day you'll be matched against an opponent who just is faster than you are, and that's just unlucky. All right, now Papa Sasuke, 5k initial, great damage for the unit, strong defensive buffs on his jutsu, and then of course he has the active at the start of the turn buffs. Wow, it's like I keep seeing this stuff over and over again. They need to really think about unit design instead of copy and pasting. Like the tanks will always say the same thing for the fourth skill and they'll just add a little bit on. So this is like a Hidan fourth skill here, but Papa Sasuke, time travel Sasuke, whatever you call this guy, just is better than Hidan. Kind of power creep version of him. Nagato, similar to Kid Kakashi, he gives you these buffs whenever you're attacking first. 5k initial, a lot of strong debuffs on his jutsu. Now Shikadai moved up somewhat, and that's because vitality is less important for this mode than it was for Arena. And he can stack his stun rate, which is great debuff and good strong buffs. You know, critical rate by 40% and guard suppression rate by 35% is really strong. And he also has an effect where he can debuff the enemies right at the beginning of the battle. Doesn't even need a jutsu, so he can always have good impact on the match even if he gets picked off first. Now we got Madara. Madara is very, very strong. Maybe I would consider putting him higher, but remember how this tier list works. A is, I think, 8 to 9 on the number rankings, and Madara's a 9. Maybe he should be a 10, but S is where the 10s are. But back to where I was. So A is 8 to 9, and we didn't organize these, so it's not like the 9s are first and then the 8s. We kind of just automatically put them into the categories. So this is just a mix of 8 and 9. I just want to make that clear. Now back to Madara. He's so good in this mode because of his fourth skill, which just provides a ton of defense for one cell. In Ninja World Tournament, you only have one cell to worry about. So perfect. 5k initial, great debuffs, especially against tanks. You can shred them. And that's important because there's a lot of tanks in this mode. So there you go. 2 very quick and easy explanations for why Madara is so broken. Now you probably want to read through this on your own if you want to see all the numbers and stuff. But trust me, I put him onto my cell and the cell does not lose. Now we've already hit 25 minutes going through S and A. So once you get into B tier, similar to the arena video, most of these guys you won't use pretty much at all, unless you're looking for replacements or something, or you're trying to build a specific cell. Maybe you're trying to get a synergy with tribe specials on a cell or a specific combo. So I'm not really going to go over all of these units because there's a lot. And a lot of these units you already know about. They're kind of like, the beginner units in a way, because they were given to you at the beginning of the game for free. So, Mama Sakura has definitely fallen in the tier lists. She still has AoE stun and healing and attack buffs, but just way overshadowed by other T units now. Let's see. You'll notice that we have a lot of tanks in here still, for the same reason that we have a lot of tanks in the other higher tiers. Now these tanks are the lower of the pack. Not too much to talk about. Maybe we'll talk about like Snake Kabuto. Remember, he has the debuffs, so that's cool. And he lowers all active enemies, but in Ninja World Tournament, you only have to deal with the active enemies because it's cell versus cell. So he also provides like cell buffs, so maybe that's more useful in Ninja World Tournament. But again, you probably don't want to use this guy, let's be honest. Tobirama, Hashirama, they haven't been ranking so well recently in the PvP tier list, despite being the first and second Hokage. But don't worry, they'll be higher ranked in the other modes. Definitely better for PvE. Itachi, man. People were really hyped, but he's just not that good. He caters to A units, but if you want to support for your A units or any other units, you can just pick some of the ones in the higher tiers, so they're just more versatile. Inojin falls under the tanks category, just not as good as the other tanks above. KLM, definitely another PvE unit. He provides some pretty good buffs though on his jutsu, but he needs to get to his jutsu, and he's not that good at protecting himself, so that's like the main worry here. He has some active at the start of the turn buffs as well, but none of these are defensive, so you really need to keep him alive if you want to actually benefit the most from this character. If he does survive, then his buffs are actually pretty insane and could definitely turn the tide of that Ninja World Tournament match in your favor. So I'd say consider building around this character carefully. He is an AoE stunner and nuker, so maybe you can fit him somewhere with the AoE builds for yourselves. But until then, we're gonna keep him here. He might be like a high B though. Again, we didn't organize any of this by high to low. I think the organization of this might be like the order that they were added into the database itself, something like that. So there we go. That's the Ninja World Tournament tier list. These videos are taking pretty long, so hope you guys stuck with me, or at least hope you guys learned enough about your own units so you know which ones to use, which ones are best to use in general for the Ninja World Tournament mode. Make sure to check out the arena tier list. It's like the same format, just for a different mode, if you haven't done so already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.